Hi, welcome to Focus Today. I'm your host, Perry Atkinson, and what a delight to have in studio with us today, an old friend, and he's running again. Dennis Richardson's with us, and this time we're delighted to talk to him about his current campaign running for Secretary of State, and he's going to give us a pretty good idea how important this position really is, and why he would be the best one to serve in that capacity. Good to see you. How are you?
Hey, I'm doing great.
Good to see you. You're looking good.
Well, I'm feeling good. I'm energized about the potential that we have for our state. I just have felt so bad that I was leaving after losing the governor. I got so close, but we had enabled a federal investigation. I mean, we had requested that and laid out 12 pages as to why that should take place. It happened. Part of the goal in running for governor was to make sure that Kitzhaber and the corrupt regime that he had did not continue. That was successful. But I really thought that we were retired. You know, in fact, for the last year after the election, Kathy and I have been volunteering our time in an employment office, helping individuals get jobs one at a time.
Right.
Well, I was approached by a couple of different groups last summer, and they were saying that Secretary of State is the office where I could accomplish the things that I had hoped to do as governor. Because as Secretary of State, there's the following things that you can accomplish. One, you're the chief auditor of the state. And so I would have a division with 72 auditors, and they're supposed to be used to ensure that the people's money is well spent. But for the last couple of decades, they've been used to avoid, you do your audits, but you avoid those things that could be embarrassing to a party or to the power. And so it was about protecting the party instead of protecting the people. And so as Secretary of State, I'll use that auditing capacity the way it was intended, where we go and we see what's happening in the agencies and departments and programs. We'll do kind of a long auditing as well, so that if there's another major issue or program, then we audit from the beginning to make sure that it doesn't go astray, and then you find out later.
Isn't that the agency oversight that we've been looking for?
Absolutely. It is, and the Secretary of State has the power and the capacity to do it in a way that even the governor doesn't. I mean, the governor is, is working with the legislature, he's cutting ribbons and doing all of those things, and it's all important. But the Secretary of State, it's not about policy, it's about making sure that the state functions well, that elections are fair and open and transparent, and because you're the head of the elections division, you're the head of corporations, we should be rolling out a carpet to businesses that might consider coming to Oregon. And so I'll be an ambassador for Oregon, trying to get good businesses that fit in with our love of the environment and our state to come here and create jobs, remove red tape that is a burden for current
All right,
businesses.
that's a good, you're bringing up a good question here. Would you have the authority to adjust some of the administrative rules that would prevent businesses from coming in? And could the legislature come after you for doing audits against themselves, so to speak?
Well, they really don't have the authority to interfere with any of the audits that are done. I mean, the Secretary of State is almost like a separate branch of government in that it's named in the Constitution, it's to get its budget from the legislature, but after that, it is to function based on what is best for the state. And so we do have the ability to see what the burdens are that are stopping businesses from growing, and then where we can make a direct difference, we do that, and where we don't, I become the lobbyist for our economy with the legislature to try and get changes that will remove senseless barriers that have just been built up over the decades.
Now, I remember your gubernatorial campaign. One of your themes was waste. How much waste do we got going on in Oregon?
Well, in the last 4 or 5 years, over $1 billion of waste. See, I talked to Phil Barnhart, who's a Democrat from Eugene once, and he said it's not about you, Dennis, on waste. We love the fact that you're out trying to make sure that money isn't wasted, because that's a nonpartisan issue. He said, now we may discuss how we would spend that money we save, but so there's been $968 million of energy tax credits that were given. Over 700 million of those, that's a huge amount of money, were sold. They didn't have anything to do to help the environment. They were just gone. And that's money that didn't come in to the tax coffers. to cover Oregon was $305 million on a website project that never worked.
I was going to ask you, where are we with that one?
It's never been audited. I mean, they've done some tweaking, but they've never done a full audit to determine what happened to the money so that we can have lessons learned to make sure we don't do that again. So that's over $300 million. The Columbia River crossing, the bridge crossing, was almost $200 million. That's a huge amount of money. Not a single shovel full of dirt was ever dug. It was all about planning. And so there's those that have gotten quite wealthy with these projects, but it's the people that end up paying for them.
All right. I'm going to come back to just the portal, the medical portal, healthcare portal that was such a failure. Is there still possibility the government could sue the state, the feds sue the state on that one?
It's a possibility. I don't know what deals were struck between Kitzhaber and President Obama and his, the staff over that back in D.C. So I'm not really sure. But the promises that by implementing Obamacare would lessen or slow down the growth in the cost of medical insurance has completely gone out the window. The premiums are going up very, very dramatically, and there's some of the providers of this that are going actually out of business. And we have MODA, which is one of the largest providers up in the Portland area, and they are in extreme trouble financially. Yeah,
and they want us to bail them out.
Yes.
Yeah. We're in special session, Dennis, and there's a lot of things going on up there, and it's supposed to be 5 weeks. It was supposed to be minor tweaking. It's turning into major policies and perhaps even some major legislation, one of them being the minimum wage. What's so interesting to me, and I don't want to sound disrespectful or critical, but all of those who for minimum wage, it appears to me none of them have ever met a payroll. So does this have a real chance of seeing the light of day, given the numbers in Salem right now, as far as the D's and the R's are concerned?
It's very possible that a bill will come out of the legislature, because the threat by those that are really proposing this is that we've got the money to drive an initiative, and we can get the signatures for it because it polls really well, and so you can either pass one out of the legislature or watch what we do on the initiative project, in that process, and you'll really see an increase in wage. And so it really could happen. And you're absolutely correct. The people that are passing these things, the leadership up in Salem, have no concept about what it really means, the consequences of doing it. It's not just about helping somebody get more income, but it's about the small businesses that can't afford to do that. The large businesses that will be looking at that and they say, okay, understand, if you do that, we're just going to transfer that cost straight to the consumers. And then everything adjusts accordingly. People making $15 an hour are going to say, oh, I'm not going to just make the same as somebody that's flipping hamburgers, that's their first job, and so I want $22. And so it will adjust upward, and the cost will be borne by the consumers.
What was the suggestion that different areas in the state would have different rates and how that would impact?
The last I heard was that they were saying, well, the Portland area could have $15.52 as their minimum wage, and the rest of the state could have like $13.50. Well, if you're in Lakeview and you've got a small cafe and you're barely making it, because your staff are getting tips and those kinds of things, well, if you have to pick up that additional labor cost, it can actually put you out of business. So how it all plays out, I'm not sure. As Secretary of State, my job is not to make those decisions on policy issues, but to implement the laws that we get. But we're all watching to see, just how can you burden business over and over again and expect that we're going to recover.
All right, let me take a break. We'll come back. We're talking to Dennis Richardson. He is a candidate for Secretary of State. What's your website?
It's Dennis for Oregon.
DennisForOregon.com.
Or actually, if you just go to DennisRichardson.com, I've got several of them, but that's probably the best one.
Just Google Dennis Richardson, up he'll pop, and check out his candidacy. By the way, the primary coming up in May here in Oregon, and we got a couple more things to talk to him about. We'll be right back.
I'm Paulina Leiser, producer of Focus Today. Thank you for watching this video, and make sure to check our other videos at theDove.us.
Okay, we're back with Dennis Richardson, and of course you know him as he was a representative for many years from Southern Oregon, and then he ran for governor and came real close of becoming governor. And after a little R&R and reprieve and time away and getting his head back, he lost his brain again because he's decided to run for Secretary of State.
Well, you know,
it has to be a calling.
We have a great state, and that's how I view it.
Yeah.
I feel people need to have a mission in their later years, and my mission is political.
Yeah.
And for me to stay away when I've got all the experience that I've gained in the legislature and being co-chair of Ways and Means, I mean, actually helping to craft the state budget, seeing the waste continue. And what really bothered me was that after Kate Brown took over as governor, she just continued to implement the policies that had been started by Kitzhaber, and he was getting paid, he and Sylvia were getting paid to promote certain industries, and she just passed those bills as if they had been well considered. And so there's been no change, there's been no accountability. The federal investigation of John Kitzhaber and Sylvia Hayes continues, and we don't know really where that's at, but there is going to be no improvement in our state if we don't have a change in leadership. The Secretary of State has the ability to speak for the people, help ensure that the money that is being spent is not wasted, and then it's up to the legislature and the governor to use that money that's not wasted to spend it appropriately.
Just going political for a moment, would the governor possibly being seen as complicit with the Kitzhaber's mess if in fact these things went through and they weren't properly vetted and passing bills that were directly influenced by outside money?
It's everybody needs to be accountable for the things that they do, and so we're not really sure what Kate's involvement was in all of that, but she's a nice person. She's now the governor. There's been no major change in ethics or in openness or accountability. And without those things that she had the opportunity to do, then she's not the leader that we need. We need a new governor, and we need a new Secretary of State.
Okay. So how much authority do you really have?
Actually, in the US, in Oregon's Constitution, you've got your legislative, executive, and your judicial, but you also have the Secretary of State and the Treasurer, and they're almost like separate entities. And so the Secretary of State has complete authority to utilize 72 auditors in a way that this person chooses to. Well, I'll probably be running against Brad Avakian, and Brad Avakian has already said, we'll use those auditors to go after businesses. Well, that was never the intent. That's what you have a Department of Revenue for. It was supposed to be to help make sure that the government is run well. And I say, you know, we've had enough of you, Brad. I mean, $135,000 fine against a bakery because they didn't want to bake a cake. I mean, we know that he will use power to promote his philosophy, not to represent the people.
Why would you go after the very part of the economy that employs people, that pays the taxes? I mean, why are you going to go after businesses? Now, granted, if there's somebody's doing something wrong, you nab them.
Of course.
But it seems to me that we are not growing in the business realm. Certainly not in Southern Oregon. I mean, we got an infrastructure here that could really take off, but we can't attract anybody.
No, the government can help clear the way and attract. I mean, I was once called Oregon's ambassador to China because I was going to China every year asking Chinese consumers to buy Oregon products. And I mean, we had a couple of contracts over $1 million that resulted from these delegations that we were doing. I learned how to do that, and I think the Secretary of State should also be out promoting our state with businesses that would fit in well with Oregon, and that's not happening. The reason it doesn't happen is we have people in charge who don't have any experience with business. They have no experience with what creates wealth and what generates jobs. They think that it's all about just getting rich people to pay more. They have no concept about the consequences of the decisions they're making.
How messed up is ODOT?
I don't know, but I don't think they've been fully audited in a long time.
I mean, we're hearing these stories that the solution to any liberal problem is more money, but we can't seem to get the potholes fixed, the bridges fixed. I mean, is it a budget thing? Is it what is it?
Well, I don't know fully what's happening with ODOT because I haven't looked at them lately. I think that they're one of the agencies that has such a huge budget that they need to be looked at closely. and just to ensure that they haven't gotten themselves on a path which is contrary to what their mission was. They're also limited by the political philosophy of the leaders up in Portland, which is you can't deal with traffic. I mean, if you've been up to Portland lately, it is a nightmare.
Yeah.
But we're told, well, that's just the way it's going to be. I mean, there was a plan years ago to make it functional, but it was decided not to do that because we want to drive people into public transportation, and yet people aren't going to leave their cars, and so it just means more traffic, more pollution, more people idling in a parking lot that used to be called a freeway 2 times of the day. And so ODOT needs to have their hands kind of untied so that they can focus on their mission and not just promoting and doing projects that are desired by those that run the state.
We still have in the Oregon Constitution a balanced budget, right?
Yes, that is our saving grace for this state.
Yes, and I know that that's been challenged, but nonetheless, is there enough money, projected enough revenue coming in to keep that going without raising taxes?
Well, certainly. The first thing that should be done is to ensure that the money we have is well spent. I mean, the liberals are saying we just need more taxes. We need higher taxes, more revenue. And I say, first, why don't you look at your own house? When you've wasted over $1 billion in the last few years and you've learned nothing from it, why don't we avoid that waste? Because, you know, a penny saved is a penny earned. Well, if we don't waste it, we could have that go into our educational systems, social programs, filling potholes. But it can't happen if we don't pay attention to what we're doing, only asking for more.
Is the PERS problem still the big issue that gobbles up the budget?
Yes, PERS is a huge problem. We're looking at between 18 and $20 billion of unfunded liability, which means that if with a pension plan, you're supposed to make sure there's enough money in reserves so that everybody gets their payment, you know, that they can rely on that. Well, in PERS, they're down, you know, between 18 and $20 billion, and with the next downturn in the stock market, that could double. And so what are you going to do about it? They say, well, we just have to have more money. So if a school district needs 5 teachers, they can only hire 4 because the money that would have gone to hire the 5th teacher is going to go to the retirement plans of the other 4. I mean, it is a horrendous problem. The Supreme Court has said that the changes that were proposed by the previous governor are not acceptable, and so we're looking at, you know, $800 to $1 billion hole from that, just that one area, plus another $1 billion or more from health care. And the governor faces in the next 2 years some major problems that haven't been addressed, and they must be addressed.
All right, when you become Secretary of State, you inherit an agency that for decades has been controlled by a philosophy other than yours.
Yes.
So you got a lot of entrenched people in there that would be hard to rally around what you want to do. What would be your goal for the first, say, month in office?
Well, I'd want to meet with the head of each of the divisions and find out where their allegiance is. I want to know if they are facing me or are facing everyone else. You know, are they going to represent me as the Secretary of State, or are they going to represent everyone else trying to convince me to change the way that we do things? We want to have directors that will see that there is a new boss, a new attitude, and it's going to be that which represents the people. I've already heard back that there's auditors, part of the 72 auditors that are in the team, that are just waiting for someone to come in and let them do their job instead of giving them assignments that look like they're accomplishing something, but they're avoiding those things that need their attention the most.
Are you at will to hire and fire who you want?
Well, there's collective bargaining, and so those are issues that have to be dealt with.
Yeah.
But there is the power to hire and fire at the top levels. And then what I've talked to some people that have been in the bureaucracy for 30 years, and they've said, generally speaking, the staff will assume the position of their leader because they're theirs career, and they want to stay. And so if they have a new leader that has a vision, that they will work to implement that vision, and that I shouldn't expect that I would become the captain of the HMS Bounty. You know? And so.
All right, so lead us through this. May is the primary.
Yes.
So if you win the Republican side, then you go to the general in November.
That's correct.
And all filings for all offices for a May primary sometime in March, isn't it?
I think it's March 8th.
8th.
And so as of March 8th, we will know if there's going to be any other candidates for governor or any other candidates for Secretary of State or any of the positions. So that is the cutoff date for filing.
Do you think Oregon, given where we have been through with Governor Kitzhaber, Kate Brown, a very liberal-controlled House and Senate all these years, do you think that Oregons have kind of reached the boiling point that the nation has, and there's a pushback now, we can't go down this road, we got to stop, go another direction?
I'm hoping so. I'm not sure if we're there yet. I believe that I can be elected, and that after I'm elected, by auditing and then renewing my newsletter, I remember I had 500,000 people, as Secretary of State, I will inform the people of the results of the audits, and we'll have applause where they're deserved, and we'll have exposure where it's deserved as well. And I believe that by 2018, the people of this state will be so shocked to see what's really been going on that they will have a desire for change that will show itself at the ballot.
Interesting. Well, it's going to be interesting to see what comes out of this special session. I don't know. Every time the legislature gets together, you got to put your hand on your wallet.
Well, that's true. Yeah. I stood up when they were talking about having this small, short session. I stood up on the floor and I debated, I argued against it. I said, if this is about being able to check your budget and make sure that financially everything is in order, then let's amend this bill and say that any non-budget issue will take a 2/3 majority. And that way you can assure that it doesn't just become a political opportunity to rush things through without time for the public to actually see what's going on. What I said was absolutely true, and that's what you have now. Huge, complicated policy bills being rushed through without adequate review.
Yeah, it's just amazing, and the Republicans can't seem to stop it right now. Yeah.
They can't. They just don't have the numbers.
Yeah.
The best thing they can hope for is a short session.
Yeah. Well, there's 5 weeks.
Well, it is. I mean, and we've got one of the bills that they're facing is essentially cap and trade, and they're saying, well, this is for the environment. Well, it doesn't change what is being done. It merely taxes those that are doing it. So it's just a way to punish businesses more, give them a greater incentive to leave our state, and without benefiting the environment at all. Just take more money if they're producing more carbon than what you think is appropriate. There just needs to be greater vision. We need to learn from experience of other states and not just take off on tangents.
Best to you, my friend.
It's a pleasure.
I'm sure we'll see you a lot between now and November. And again, you can go to DennisRichardson.com, check it out, or just Google Dennis Richardson. He'll pop up, and get behind his campaign and support him. Maybe you want to become a volunteer. Just check it all out. Thanks, Dennis.
Thank you.
All right, we'll be right back.